She never wanted this marriage. He never wanted mercy. But on the edge of a war between two worlds, her tears will do something no weapon ever could. Reach the heart of a warrior. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Montana Territory, 1868. The harsh winter winds had finally given way to spring, bringing new life to the rolling plains that stretched across the horizon. But for Katherine Winters, the changing seasons brought little comfort. Standing at the small window of her father's trading post, she stared out at the endless prairie with a mixture of dread and resignation etched across her face. "You have no choice, Katherine." Her father's voice cut through her thoughts. "This alliance with the Sioux will save our lives and our business." She turned to face him, her blue eyes flashing with defiance. "You're trading me like one of your blankets or rifles, father. Is that what mother would have wanted?" Samuel Winters looked away, unable to meet his daughter's gaze. The last 3 years had been brutal for them. After his wife's death, he had moved them west, hoping to build a new life. But repeated Sioux raids on supply wagons had left the trading post nearly bankrupt. When Chief Gray Wolf had offered peace in exchange for his daughter as a bride for his son, Eagle Shadow, Samuel had seen no alternative. "The wedding happens tomorrow," he said firmly. "Eagle Shadow is a respected warrior. You'll be treated well." Katherine fought back tears. "You don't know that. You're sending me to live among people who see us as enemies. What kind of life will that be?" Her father's shoulders slumped. "A life, Katherine. Which is more than we might have if the raids continue. I'm sorry." As Samuel left the room, Katherine turned back to the window. In the distance, she could see a group of Sioux warriors approaching on horseback. Her heart pounded as she recognized their leader, a tall, imposing figure with features as hard as stone. Eagle Shadow, the man who would soon be her husband. The warriors dismounted outside the trading post. Through the window, Katherine studied Eagle Shadow's face. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps in his late 20s, with high cheekbones and piercing dark eyes. His expression revealed nothing as he spoke with her father. "Miss Katherine," Abigail, their housekeeper, appeared at her side. "Your father wants you to come out and meet them." Katherine's legs felt weak as she followed Abigail outside. The spring air was cool against her face, carrying the scent of prairie grass and wildflowers. How cruel that such beauty existed on the day her freedom would end. Eagle Shadow's gaze fell upon her immediately. She forced herself to stand straight, refusing to show fear. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, Katherine thought she saw something unexpected in his expression. Not cruelty or triumph, but a flash of uncertainty, quickly masked. Her father beckoned her forward. "Katherine, this is Eagle Shadow, son of Chief Gray Wolf. You will be joining his people tomorrow." Eagle Shadow studied her without speaking. Then, to her surprise, he addressed her in perfect English. "You fear this union." It wasn't a question, but Katherine answered anyway. "Wouldn't you if you were being given to strangers?" A muscle tightened in his jaw. "I do not take what is not freely given. Yet, here you are," she countered, her voice barely above a whisper. Eagle Shadow's companions shifted uncomfortably, but he remained still, his eyes never leaving hers. "The ways of our peoples are different, but respect can be found even where choice is not." Before Katherine could respond, he turned to her father. "We will return at dawn, have her ready." With that, he mounted his horse and led his warriors away. That night, Katherine sat alone in her room, a single candle illuminating the small space. She had packed her few belongings: dresses, a hairbrush, her mother's Bible, and a small portrait of her parents on their wedding day. Tears streamed down her face as she contemplated what awaited her. In the Sioux camp, she would be a stranger, separated from everything familiar. Would she ever see her father again? Would Eagle Shadow be cruel? The questions tormented her as darkness settled over the plains. "God help me," she whispered into the night. "Give me strength to face whatever comes." As dawn broke over the horizon, Katherine stood ready, dressed in her best blue dress, her honey-blonde hair neatly braided. When Eagle Shadow arrived with a larger party of Sioux, including women who brought a traditional buckskin dress for the ceremony, Katherine accepted her fate with quiet dignity. She changed into the dress, allowing the Sioux women to adorn her hair with beads. Her father embraced her awkwardly. "Be strong," he murmured. This is for the best." Katherine said nothing, as Eagle Shadow helped her onto a horse. As they rode away from the only home she had known in the territory, she refused to look back. Whatever waited ahead, she would face it with courage. But as the trading post disappeared behind them, she could no longer hold back her tears. The Sioux encampment spread across the valley like a small city of hide-covered teepees. As Katherine rode beside Eagle Shadow, curious faces emerged to study the white woman who would join their tribe. Children ran alongside the horses, pointing and whispering. Women paused in their work to watch with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Katherine felt like an animal on display, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She fixed her gaze straight ahead, refusing to show how deeply their stares affected her. Eagle Shadow guided her to a large teepee at the center of the camp. "My father waits to welcome you," he said, his voice revealing nothing of his thoughts. Chief Gray Wolf was an imposing figure despite his age. Deep lines etched his weathered face, and his long hair, streaked with silver, was adorned with eagle feathers. He studied Katherine with shrewd eyes as Eagle Shadow introduced her in the Lakota language. "So," the chief said in halting English, "you are the one who will bring peace between our peoples." Katherine summoned her courage. "I did not choose this role, but I will honor the agreement." A flicker of something, respect perhaps, crossed the old man's face. He spoke to his son in their language, and Eagle Shadow nodded. "The ceremony will be at sunset," Eagle Shadow told her. "Until then, you will stay with Morning Star, my sister. She will prepare you." A young woman stepped forward, perhaps a few years younger than Katherine. Unlike the others, her expression held no hostility, only curiosity. She took Katherine's hand and led her away to another teepee. Inside, Morning Star helped Katherine remove the beaded dress, replacing it with a simpler one for the preparations. Through gestures and the few English words she knew, she indicated that Katherine should sit while she brushed her long blonde hair. "Brother." "Good man," Morning Star said carefully, meeting Katherine's eyes in a small metal mirror. "Strong. Brave." Katherine remained silent, unsure how to respond. How could she explain to this girl that none of that mattered when she was being forced into marriage with a stranger? As the afternoon progressed, more women joined them, bringing food and gifts. One elderly woman painted Katherine's face with red ochre, murmuring what sounded like blessings. Despite her resistance to everything happening around her, Katherine found herself touched by these small kindnesses. When the time came for the ceremony, Katherine was once again dressed in the elaborate buckskin dress. Morning Star had woven small white flowers into her braids and placed a necklace of blue beads around her neck. "For happy life," the girl explained, touching the beads. Outside, the entire tribe had gathered. Drums began to beat as Katherine was led to where Eagle Shadow stood with his father. The warrior was dressed in his finest attire, his chest bare beneath a vest adorned with quill work, his leggings fringed and decorated. A single eagle feather rose from his dark hair. The ceremony was brief but solemn. Chief Gray Wolf spoke at length in Lakota, occasionally gesturing toward Katherine and his son. Eagle Shadow responded with formal words that seemed memorized. Then the chief took Katherine's hand and placed it in Eagle Shadow's. In that moment, as their skin touched, Katherine felt a jolt of awareness. Eagle Shadow's hand was warm and calloused from years of hunting and fighting, yet his grip was surprisingly gentle. Their eyes met, and she saw again that flash of something unreadable. A feast followed the ceremony. Katherine sat beside Eagle Shadow, barely touching the food placed before her. The celebrations continued well into the night, with dancing and singing around a massive bonfire. Through it all, Katherine remained silent, a stranger in a strange land. When the festivities finally began to wind down, Eagle Shadow rose and extended his hand to her. "Come," he said simply. Heart pounding, Katherine followed him to a teepee set apart from the others. Inside, furs covered the ground, and a small fire burned in the center, filling the space with golden light. Eagle Shadow gestured for her to sit. "This is your home now," he said, his deep voice echoing in the enclosed space. Katherine wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly terrified of what would come next. "And what happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eagle Shadow regarded her silently for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he moved to the opposite side of the fire and sat down, creating distance between them. "Now we sleep," he said. "It has been a long day." Katherine stared at him in confusion. "But we're married." A flicker of something like amusement crossed his face. "Yes, and tomorrow we begin to know each other. Tonight, you rest." Relief flooded through her, so powerful she nearly wept. "Thank you," she whispered. Eagle Shadow nodded once, then stretched out on his side of the teepee, his back to her. Katherine lay down on the soft furs, still fully clothed, and stared at the smoke hole above, where stars twinkled in the night sky. Sleep seemed impossible, yet exhaustion eventually claimed her. She awoke to find herself alone in the teepee. Sunlight filtered through the hide walls, and outside she could hear the sounds of the camp coming to life. She sat up, disoriented, before remembering where she was and why. Tentatively, Katherine stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, and dew glistened on the grass. Women moved about the camp, tending fires and preparing food. Children played between the teepees, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Morning Star appeared at her side, smiling. "Come," she said, taking Katherine's hand. "Eat." She led Katherine to where a group of women sat grinding corn. They made space for her, offering a wooden bowl filled with a thick porridge. Katherine accepted it gratefully, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. As she ate, she scanned the camp for Eagle Shadow. She spotted him with a group of men, preparing for what appeared to be a hunting party. He looked up as if sensing her gaze, and their eyes met across the distance. He gave her a small nod before turning back to his companions. "He is good man," an older woman beside Katherine said in broken English. "You see, time comes." Katherine lowered her eyes to her bowl. She didn't want to be won over by small kindnesses or gentle gestures. She wanted to hate these people who had taken her from her home. But as the morning progressed and the women showed her their crafts, teaching her to weave baskets and scrape hides, she found it increasingly difficult to maintain her resentment. That evening, when Eagle Shadow returned from hunting, he brought her a gift, a small carved wooden horse. "For you," he said, placing it in her hands, "to remember that you are free to ride wherever you wish within our territory. You are not a prisoner here." Katherine stared at the tiny figure, so delicately crafted. "Did you make this?" He nodded. "When I was a boy, my grandfather taught me to carve. It passes the time on long hunts." It was the most he had spoken to her since their marriage. Katherine closed her fingers around the horse, unexpectedly moved by the gesture. "Thank you," she said softly. That night, as they sat across from each other in their teepee, Katherine found the courage to ask the question that had been plaguing her. "Why did you agree to marry a white woman? Surely there were women in your tribe you could have chosen." Eagle Shadow was silent for so long that Katherine thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "My father believes that bonds between our peoples are necessary for survival. The white settlers continue to come. Fighting alone will lead to our destruction." He paused, studying the flames. "I trust my father's wisdom. But that doesn't explain why you agreed," Katherine pressed. Eagle Shadow's dark eyes met hers across the fire. "I have seen too much death. If my marriage to you brings peace, then it is a small price to pay." His words stung, though Katherine couldn't explain why. "So I am merely a duty to you." "Are you not the same to your father?" he countered. "Was this not a trade for him as well?" Katherine had no answer for that. They lapsed into silence as the fire crackled between them, each lost in their own thoughts about the strange circumstances that had brought them together. As days turned into weeks, Katherine found herself settling into the rhythm of life in the Sioux camp. Each morning, she joined the women in their daily tasks, gathering wood, preparing food, tanning hides, and sewing clothing. Her hands, once soft from a relatively easy life at the trading post, grew calloused and strong. Morning Star became her constant companion, patiently teaching her Lakota words and explaining tribal customs. Though communication remained difficult, Katherine found herself drawn to the young woman's cheerful spirit and genuine kindness. "My brother," Morning Star said one day as they worked side by side scraping a deer hide. "He watches you." Katherine glanced up, surprised. "What do you mean?" Morning Star smiled knowingly. "His eyes follow you, always." Katherine had noticed that Eagle Shadow often seemed to be nearby, though he rarely approached her directly. In their shared teepee, he remained respectful, keeping his distance and speaking little. Still, there were moments when she would catch him studying her with an intensity that made her heart race. "He is fulfilling his duty," Katherine said carefully. "Nothing more." Morning Star shook her head, clearly disagreeing, but said nothing further. That evening, as Katherine sat outside their teepee watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Eagle Shadow approached. Without a word, he sat beside her, his presence both intimidating and oddly comforting. "The women say you learn quickly," he said after a while. Katherine nodded. "Your sister is a good teacher." She hesitated, then added, "I've been trying to understand your ways." "And do you understand?" She considered his question. "Some things. Your people value family and honor. You respect the land and take only what you need. These things I understand." She turned to look at him. "But other things remain foreign to me." Eagle Shadow's expression softened slightly. "As your ways remain foreign to me. Yet we must both learn. Must we not?" For the first time since their marriage, Katherine felt something shift between them. A small opening, a hint of possibility. "Yes," she agreed quietly. "We must." The next morning, Eagle Shadow surprised her by asking if she would ride with him. "I would show you something," he explained when she hesitated. Curious, Katherine agreed. He brought her a gentle mare and helped her mount, his hands strong and sure at her waist. They rode out from the camp, following a winding path through rolling hills until they reached a small hidden valley, where a clear stream flowed through lush grass. "It is beautiful," Katherine breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. Eagle Shadow dismounted and helped her down. "This place is sacred to my people. My father brought me here as a boy, and his father before him." He led her to a circle of stones near the stream. "Our ancestors have come to this place for generations to seek visions and guidance. I thought," he paused, looking almost uncertain, "I thought you might find peace here." Touched by his thoughtfulness, Katherine knelt beside the stream, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "Thank you for showing me this place." Eagle Shadow sat nearby, watching her. "You are unhappy," he said suddenly. "You hide it well, but I see it in your eyes." Katherine's throat tightened. "I miss my father, I miss books and music, I miss knowing exactly what is expected of me." She looked up at him. "But I am trying. As am I," he admitted quietly. "This marriage is not what I would have chosen either." His honesty should have hurt her, but instead, Katherine found it refreshing. "Then we have that in common, at least." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps it is a beginning." They remained by the stream for hours, talking more freely than they ever had before. Eagle Shadow told her of his childhood, of hunting with his father and learning the ways of a warrior. Katherine shared stories of her mother, who had taught her to read and play the piano before illness took her. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly returned to camp. Katherine was surprised to find herself reluctant for the day to end. Something had changed between them, a small but significant shift that left her feeling unsettled yet hopeful. That night in their teepee, Eagle Shadow asked her to teach him more English words. In return, he taught her Lakota phrases. They sat closer than usual, the fire between them no longer a boundary but a shared warmth. When it came time to sleep, Katherine found herself watching Eagle Shadow as he settled onto his furs. The firelight played across his strong features, softening them. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge that her husband was not just a fearsome warrior, but a man, complex, thoughtful, and unexpectedly gentle. The next morning, Katherine was startled awake by shouting outside. Eagle Shadow was already gone, his side of the teepee empty. Heart pounding, she rushed outside to find the camp in chaos. Warriors mounted horses while women gathered children close. Morning Star ran to her side, face tense with worry. "White soldiers," she explained in halting English. "Coming." Fear clutched at Katherine's heart. Soldiers meant potential conflict, and she was caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Eagle Shadow appeared, dressed for battle with his rifle in hand. "Stay with the women and children," he ordered. "If there is fighting, go with Morning Star into the hills." "Wait," Katherine caught his arm. "Let me speak to them. I'm white. They might listen to me." His expression darkened. "They will see only a woman who lives with the Sioux. They will call you worse than a traitor." "Please," she insisted. I can't stand by and watch bloodshed if there's any chance I can prevent it. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, surprising her, he nodded once. Stay behind me until I say otherwise. They rode out with a small group of warriors to meet the approaching soldiers. From a distance, Katherine could see that it was a relatively small detachment, perhaps 20 men led by a lieutenant. They halted when they spotted the Sioux riders. Let me go forward with you, Katherine said, as Eagle Shadow prepared to approach the soldiers. He studied her face intently. Why would you risk yourself for my people? The answer came to her with startling clarity. Because they're becoming my people too. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, and perhaps something deeper. Without a word, he helped her from her horse onto his, positioning her in front of him. Together, they rode toward the soldiers, stopping a safe distance away. The lieutenant's eyes widened when he spotted Katherine. Ma'am, are you being held against your will? Katherine sat straighter. No, Lieutenant. I am Katherine Winters, and I am here by choice as the wife of Eagle Shadow, son of Chief Grey Wolf. The officer's expression hardened. We've had reports of a white woman being taken captive. Your father is worried sick. There has been a misunderstanding, Katherine said firmly. I am here as part of a peace agreement between my father's trading post and the Sioux. There is no need for conflict. She could feel Eagle Shadow's tension behind her, his body rigid as he watched the soldiers for any sign of aggression. One wrong move from either side could spark violence. The lieutenant seemed skeptical. If you're here willingly, why haven't you sent word to your father? Guilt washed over Katherine. She hadn't considered how her father might be worrying. That was an oversight on my part. I would be grateful if you would carry a message to him. After a tense negotiation, it was agreed that Katherine would write a letter to her father confirming her safety, which the lieutenant would deliver. The soldiers departed without incident, but the encounter left the camp on edge. That evening, as Katherine sat in their teepee writing her letter by firelight, Eagle Shadow watched her with a new awareness. You could have gone with them, he said quietly. They would have taken you back to your father. Katherine looked up from her paper. Is that what you thought I would do? It would have been your right. She set aside her quill, suddenly needing him to understand. This marriage may have begun as an arrangement, but I gave my word. I don't break promises. Eagle Shadow moved closer, sitting beside her rather than across the fire. There is honor in that. Besides, she added softly, I'm beginning to find reasons to stay. His hand found hers in the firelight, strong fingers entwining with her more delicate ones. And I am beginning to be grateful that you do. Katherine's breath caught at his touch, and the intensity of his gaze. For the first time since their marriage, she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer, drawn by a force she hadn't expected to feel. I never thought, Eagle Shadow said, his voice low, that I could find such strength in a white woman, or such beauty. His words sent warmth spreading through her, and I never imagined finding gentleness in a Sioux warrior. The distance between them had never seemed so small. When his free hand rose to gently touch her cheek, Katherine closed her eyes, surrendering to the connection that had been growing between them despite all odds. His lips found hers, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence as she responded. In that kiss, worlds collided and barriers fell. It was no longer a union of necessity but a meeting of hearts, unexpected, unplanned, yet undeniably real. When they finally parted, Katherine knew with certainty that something fundamental had changed. The marriage that had begun as her greatest fear had somehow transformed into something she hadn't dared hope for, the possibility of love. Summer had given way to autumn, painting the plains in gold and amber when the message arrived. Katherine was helping the women preserve meat for the coming winter when a rider approached the camp, a young man from her father's trading post. Her heart leapt at the sight of a familiar face from her old life. The messenger, Tom Wilson, dismounted and removed his hat awkwardly as Katherine approached. Miss Katherine, he greeted her. Your father sent me. He's taken ill and asks for you. Concern washed over her. How serious is it? Tom shifted uncomfortably. The doctor isn't certain, ma'am. He's asking for you something fierce. Katherine turned to find Eagle Shadow already standing behind her, his expression unreadable as he listened to the exchange. I must go to him, she said, meeting her husband's eyes. Eagle Shadow nodded once. I will accompany you. His response surprised her. In the months they had been married, their relationship had deepened into something neither had expected. What had begun as duty had transformed gradually into respect, then affection, and finally love, though neither had spoken the word aloud. Still, she hadn't been certain how he would react to her need to return to the world she had left behind. We will leave at dawn, Eagle Shadow decided, addressing both Katherine and the messenger. You will stay with us tonight, he added to Tom, who nodded nervously. As Katherine prepared for the journey, Morning Star helped her pack, the young woman's face solemn. You will return? She asked, her English much improved from their months together. Katherine embraced her sister-in-law. Of course I will. This is my home now. Morning Star smiled, relief evident in her eyes. My brother would be lost without you. He smiles now. Before you, never smiles. Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest at these words. It was true. The stern warrior she had first met had slowly revealed a different side to her. In private moments he showed tenderness and even humor that few others ever witnessed. That evening, as they prepared for sleep, Eagle Shadow was unusually quiet. Katherine watched him as he methodically checked his weapons for the journey. What troubles you? She asked softly. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. Your father's world will remind you of what you have given up. Understanding dawned on her. You fear I won't return. He said nothing, but his silence confirmed her suspicion. Katherine moved to kneel before him, taking his hands in hers. Listen to me, Eagle Shadow. When I first came here, I was afraid and resentful. I thought only of what I had lost. She squeezed his hands. But now I think of what I have found. His expression softened. And what have you found, Katherine? She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. A home, a people, a husband who honors and respects me. She paused, gathering courage. Love. It was the first time either had spoken the word. Eagle Shadow's breath caught, and then he pulled her close, his arms enfolding her in a protective embrace. I did not expect this, he murmured against her hair. When my father arranged this marriage, I thought only of duty to my people. And now? Katherine whispered. He drew back slightly to look into her eyes. Now I think of you, of us, of the children we might have, who will carry both worlds within them. The mention of children made Katherine's heart swell with hope. They will be bridges between our peoples. Yes, he agreed, a rare smile transforming his face. They will be hope. They set out at first light, Katherine riding beside Eagle Shadow, with Tom following nervously behind. The journey to the trading post would take 2 days, and they traveled in companionable silence for much of it, stopping only to rest the horses and eat. On the evening of the first day, as they made camp beside a small stream, Tom finally worked up the courage to speak directly to Eagle Shadow. Sir, he began hesitantly, I've heard stories about the Sioux warriors all my life. Never thought I'd be sharing a campfire with one. Eagle Shadow regarded the young man steadily. And are we as fearsome as your stories claim? Tom flushed. Well, sir, I'm beginning to think maybe not all of them are true. Katherine hid a smile as she watched the exchange. It was a small moment, but significant. 2 men from different worlds finding common ground, however tentative. When they arrived at the trading post the following afternoon, Katherine felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and detachment. The small cluster of buildings that had once been her home now seemed alien to her eyes, accustomed as they had become to the open freedom of the Sioux camp. Her father was indeed ill, confined to his bed with a fever that had persisted for weeks. When Katherine entered his room, Samuel Winters's eyes filled with tears at the sight of his daughter. Katherine, he whispered, reaching for her hand. I feared I'd never see you again. She sat beside him, squeezing his thin fingers. I'm here, Father, and I've brought my husband. Samuel's eyes widened as Eagle Shadow stepped into the room. The Sioux warrior inclined his head respectfully to the older man. Your daughter has brought honor to both our peoples, Eagle Shadow said formally. I have come to thank you for the gift of her companionship. Katherine's heart swelled at his words. To hear him acknowledge her value so openly, especially to her father, moved her deeply. Samuel studied the tall warrior with new eyes. She seems different, stronger. She has always been strong, Eagle Shadow replied. Now she knows it. Over the next several days, Katherine tended to her father as his health slowly improved. The doctor attributed his recovery to the presence of his daughter, though Katherine suspected it had more to do with the herbal remedies Morning Star had insisted she bring along. Eagle Shadow, meanwhile, became an object of fascination for the small community around the trading post. Children followed him at a distance, both terrified and enthralled. Adults watched him warily at first, then with growing curiosity as they observed his interactions with Katherine, the gentle way he deferred to her, the respect evident in his every gesture. One evening, as Katherine sat on the porch of the trading post watching the sunset, her father joined her, moving slowly but clearly on the mend. "You love him," Samuel said. It wasn't a question. Katherine nodded. "I do." It happened so gradually I hardly noticed until it was already true. Her father sighed heavily. "When I arranged this marriage, I thought only of our survival. I never considered that you might find happiness." "Nor did I," Katherine admitted. "But I have, Father. A different kind of happiness than I imagined, but real nonetheless." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become." Tears welled in Katherine's eyes. "I hope so. Will you stay?" he asked tentatively. "Now that you're here?" Katherine shook her head. "My place is with my husband and his people now. But we will visit, and perhaps—" She hesitated, then continued, "Perhaps when we have children, they could know both worlds." Samuel's eyes brightened at the mention of grandchildren. "I would like that very much." As her father's health continued to improve, Katherine knew the time was approaching when she and Eagle Shadow would return to the Sioux camp. The night before their planned departure, a small gathering was held at the trading post, a tentative celebration that brought together settlers and a few brave members of the Sioux tribe who had accompanied Eagle Shadow on a hunting expedition earlier that day. It was an awkward affair at first, with both sides watchful and wary. But as the evening progressed, Katherine observed something remarkable. Cautious conversations beginning, curious questions being asked, and even occasional laughter shared over cups of coffee and plates of food. Standing at the edge of the gathering, Eagle Shadow came to her side. "This is what peace looks like," he observed quietly. "Small steps, uncertain, fragile." Katherine leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "But possible." He nodded, his arm slipping around her waist. "Because of you." She shook her head. "Because of us. What we found together." Later that night, as they prepared for sleep in the small room Katherine had once called her own, Eagle Shadow pulled something from his pack, a delicately carved wooden cradle board, small enough to hold in both hands. "I made this," he said, presenting it to her. "For our future." Katherine ran her fingers over the intricate carvings, symbols of protection and blessing that she had learned to recognize during her time with the Sioux. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "A child of our union will be a bridge between worlds," Eagle Shadow said, his voice deep with emotion. "A symbol of what is possible when we look beyond our differences." Katherine placed the cradle board carefully on a table, then turned back to her husband. Standing on tiptoe, she kissed him, pouring all her love and hope into the gesture. "I was forced to marry a Sioux warrior," she murmured against his lips, "but I freely choose to love the man I found beneath the war paint." Eagle Shadow's arms tightened around her. "And I, who took a white woman as a duty, now cherish her as the greatest gift of my life." The following morning, as they prepared to depart, Katherine embraced her father one last time. "We will return when the summer moon is high," she promised, "and perhaps by then there will be news of a grandchild." Samuel's eyes shone with tears and hope. "I will be waiting." As Katherine mounted her horse beside Eagle Shadow, she looked back at the trading post one last time. It would always be part of her past, but no longer represented her future. That future waited on the open plains, a life woven from two cultures, strengthened by differences rather than divided by them. Eagle Shadow reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. "Are you ready, my wife?" Katherine smiled, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on her face and the certainty of love in her heart. "Yes, my husband. Take me home." They rode side by side toward the horizon, where the vast prairie stretched endlessly before them, not as a barrier between worlds, but as a shared homeland that held promise for them both. Behind them, the small gathering of settlers and Sioux watched their departure, witnesses to a union that had begun in duty and blossomed into something that offered hope to all. Katherine's tears had indeed awakened Eagle Shadow's heart, and in doing so, they had planted seeds of peace that would grow stronger with each passing season, nurtured by the love of two people who had found their way across the divide.